Hello, tennis fans, and welcome to another edition of the OTA's On Tennis podcast series. Today's special guest is Karl Hale. Karl is a distinguished figure in the international tennis community, recognized both for his accomplishments on the court and his influential role in shaping the sport off it. Based in Toronto, Karl's best known as the long-standing tournament director of the National Bank Open presented by Rogers, one of the most prestigious events on the ATP and WTA tour. A former professional tennis player representing Jamaica in Davis Cup competition, Karl has leveraged his extensive playing experience into a multifaceted career as coach, executive, and global tennis ambassador. Karl began his coaching career in Toronto, coaching at several clubs over the years, including Rosedale Tennis Club, Davisville Tennis Club, and the Donalda Club, all in Toronto. Over the past few years, he has also added club owner to his resume, currently operating 3 premier racket clubs in Markham, Brampton, and Mississauga. He also founded Premium Court, a tennis and pickleball court construction company. Under Karl's leadership as its tournament director, the National Bank Open presented by Rogers in Toronto has grown in prominence, recognized for its fan-friendly innovations, world-class facilities, and seamless organization, and of course, excellent tennis. His dedication to excellence has helped attract the sport's biggest stars to Toronto year after year. Beyond the tournament, Karl is also known for his philanthropic initiatives, particularly his work through the Helping Hands Jamaica Foundation, which supports education and development projects in Jamaica. His efforts have a lasting impact both in Canada and abroad. It's our pleasure to welcome Karl to the On Tennis podcast. Welcome, Karl, and thanks for taking the time to be here with us today. So let's start by getting our listeners and our watchers a little bit about your background. So where on earth did you start tennis? Because I've seen you play. You must have been coached. You've obviously played all your life, but where did you actually start the game?
Well, I'm the typical story in Ontario here. There's a public courts near my house at Fairview Mall, and I would walk over to the courts, and my brother was the pro there, and I just started hitting against the wall and enjoyed the game and joined the junior clinic and had a passion for the sport that nobody can rival, just love it. And started to play, got a little bit better, worked really hard, got a scholarship to University of New Mexico, and just started from there.
Nice. Well, I guess that answers my next question. Who was your first pro?
Yeah,
it's your brother.
Yeah, you know, my brother was a real inspiration to me. It's somebody I really love and admire and has helped me a lot, you know, not just on the court, but off the court. So he coached me when I was very, very young, and he went to Old Dominion University on a tennis scholarship. He was, you know, top 40 in college in the States and number 4 in Canada. And he would play with me at every chance he had. So it really benefited my game, and I was really fortunate to have someone like that in my life.
So then I guess you must have played some OTA junior tournaments, did you?
I played, you know, it's a great story, and I hope it inspires some people out there. Is when my first OTA tournament, I was almost 14. I was 13. It was July. I played the Polar Cup.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And I went to the tournament. I thought I was going to win it, and I lost love and love to Jory Mittelstadt first round. And I went in the consolation. I lost 1-1 to Michael Horowitz. And it didn't deter me, and I just, you know, became determined to be better. And every year I'd look at the rankings, and, you know, in a couple of years I was one of the top players in Ontario.
Yeah, you know, they say you learn a lot more from your losses than your wins, right? So
I must be a genius then.
Yeah, exactly. So advanced through the junior ranks, went on a scholarship, obviously, and then took a crack at some pro events, and as well. You were being born in Jamaica. You were able to actually make it onto the Davis Cup team for Jamaica. So talk a little bit about your early pro days and how that parlayed into the Davis Cup play, because you played quite a few times for Jamaica.
Yeah, you know, my claim to fame is that I was the best that never was. So I was fortunate that I was a good athlete and had an aptitude for the sport. And, you know, I wasn't competitive enough on a daily basis, but I had moments,
right.
You know, so I beat some good players. I beat Marty Larondo when he was like 80 in the world. And I beat Tim Wilkison and Peter Doohan and a couple other players that were pretty good. and had some close losses to some really good players, but I wasn't competitive enough like these players on a daily basis. Yeah. And I knew that early on, but I love the sport and I love the environment. Right. And so I wanted to stay in the game. So I stayed in the game as a coach and an executive and an owner, and just, you know, it's the best sport in the world to everybody out there. Keep your kids and families involved because you can do it forever.
Yeah. So I guess you transitioned at first from the playing days into coaching. I know you were at, Davisville and Rosedale, and then laterally Donalda. Talk about those little, those days. I guess apart from being right immersed in the sport, teaching it at this point, you're also, especially at a place like Donalda, learning sort of the back end of how the business side of the sport as well. So, tell me how those days and how that sort of further educated you on your journey.
Yeah, so I made the decision to make my living from the sport, and it started as a coach. And like anything we do and we want our children to do, I took it seriously. So I got all the education I possibly could. I did all the Tennis Ontario courses, the Tennis Canada courses. I took a level 4 course that was a 2-year course every weekend. And 2 Wednesdays a month for 2 years. It was a great course. And so I was very serious about learning not just the coaching side, which I developed into a pretty good coach. I had a very strong junior program. I think I probably over $1 million of scholarships from my kids they earned. And, coached the Fed Cup team for Canada, the Davis Cup team for Jamaica, worked with some top players. So I really took it seriously. And then on the business side, the PTR really helped me on the business side.
Right, yeah.
Because at the time, the certification in Canada wasn't diversified enough in that aspect. It was just the coaching. So I went down there to Hilton Head and just studied all the business aspects of it so I could grow my business acumen. And there was a convergence of the coaching and the business side. Right. And as I grew and grew, I, ran clubs and developed programs and earned my stripes from Davisville to Rosedale to Donalda, and now as an owner of Premier Racket Clubs.
So actually just looking at the PTR, that you actually were, I think, the chair for a time as well, actually. So you've sort of stayed in touch with that organization while still doing all your other stuff here, and obviously kind of merging with the TPA courses that you took. So I guess that was an important part of getting things going back then.
I think, we are our relationships. Yeah. And I think my relationships, with Tennis Canada and the OTA and PTR are really valuable, and I try to give back as much as I can as I take. So all of the relationships I have are long-standing, and I try to keep them close.
So while you were coaching in those days, I think you were dabbling a little bit in some of the Masters, what we formerly see as, but some of the Masters tournaments around Toronto and area. Yeah. So I think you had some pretty good success there. And did you play any Worlds or anything like that for Canada?
Yeah. So like we said earlier, I was the best that never was, and also a jack of all trades, master of none. So I love to compete and I love to play. Even today, I play 2 or 3 times a week with some old friends. And I played the senior tournaments for quite a long time. And one year I played a lot, and I got up to number 1 in the world in the over 40s, which was, a fun accomplishment. And the ITF does a really good job, and Erwin Tobias really helped develop senior tennis here in Canada. That it made it a lot of fun to compete with old friends and old contemporaries. So I still try to do that every once in a while when the body can hold up. Yeah,
the Wilson circuit in the winter was really good. Mayfair Wilson circuit. I saw you play there a couple times. I played once or twice. You were the best in the world at one point. I was, I think, the best on my street, but that's debatable. I remember playing one of those tournaments, and I was, it was actually Erwin who put me on Friday at 1:00, and I was out of the tournament by 2:00, and all you guys were just showing up. It's a little disconcerting, but you know what? Great days, and like you say, the camaraderie and lifelong friendships you made from those days were great on the circuit. Let's talk a little bit before we. I mean, obviously, we want to talk to you about the upcoming tournament and your role as tournament director. But you mentioned it before. you've branched out into club ownership now, court building ownership. Talk a little bit about that and like how you parlayed your sort of teaching days and playing days into this, basically running clubs now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm a philomath, a lifelong learner. So I love racket sports and tennis in particular. So I always wanted to accelerate my business interest in the realm that I love. So tennis club ownership was an extension of that, and court construction as well. So during COVID, I decided to branch out and start those two ventures. And the club industry is just a huge passion, because I remember as a kid how much I loved going to the club and playing with my friends, and even, playing with the older people at the clubs. So at Premier Racket Clubs, we try to, offer all of the different services of a club with excellence and provide a great environment for kids and adults alike. And with Premier Court, we're doing a lot of courts. We just finished doing Mayfair and some other courts in the city, and we do the best job, the best service. And it's just great to make a living at the sport you love.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on something there. I think there's a fine balance when they are commercial enterprises. Yours are wintertime clubs, but we both came up through the club system, which is obviously part of the OTA's, an important part of the OTA structure. But that club dynamic that people are attracted to, I think it's a really important part, especially nowadays, post-COVID. So the socialization aspect, I think it's important to not just say, hey, book a court, come and leave. I think Premier's got a bit of a reputation of sort of making it like an old-fashioned club in a way.
Yeah, and I think that, if you always remember that greatness is in the agency of others, and others are your club members or your clients, that you're always listening to their feedback and how to improve. And that's, your viewpoint with the business, that you'll always have a great product and people that are really happy with your business.
Right.
So we try to keep that in mind every aspect of the way, to do the best business, the best services that we possibly can.
Right.
So that people walk away and they know our brand is always, at the top level that they expect.
Right. Any future expansion plans at the moment that you can talk about, or still looking around?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be opening up another club in Brampton, which will be tennis, pickleball, and paddle. We're really excited, and there's a few more kicking around.
Right.
But right now, we're actually going through an internal audit of our company to improve all aspects of the company, the programming, the product, the coaching, the events, all of these things. Right. And it's something we do annually.
Right.
Constant improvement is what our team is all about. So we just try to ensure that we have the best product.
Yeah. And, the OTA owes you some thanks as well, because you've been running some of our events there. And as we all know, and particularly with your relationship with Tennis Canada, indoor courts are at a premium right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even outdoor, there's waiting lists at clubs and that sort of thing. So I think it's important for the tennis community at large, led by folks like you, to put more places out there for people to play, because everybody's talking about pickleball and padel, which are certainly on a fast track of growth. But we have a court capacity issue here in Ontario and Canada as well. So, maybe talk a little bit about that, because I mean, my club has like a waiting list of 4 to 5 years, right now, and even in the outdoor realm.
Yeah, I think as a lifelong individual in the tennis ecosphere, is that, you have to be mindful, always remember the ecosystem of our sport, and tournaments is a big part of that. And these kids need the opportunity to play, and adults, to participate and play. And it's, we try to tell people we're not a profit center, that, we have to run a business, but we're mindful, and outside of the tournament aspect, one of the unique pillars of our business is our PRC Foundation. Right. So we have annual drives. For example, every December we have an online auction to raise funds for our community projects. Every January we do a racket and a shoe drive to give to different entities. We gave, I think it was 100 shoes to Rohan Bopana, who's the #1 player in the world in India. shoes, and we do stuff for our communities as well. Our club championships, every individual that enters our club championships, we plant a tree in the community.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, we're very mindful that, you know, we're part of a community and we want to benefit the community and not just the profit center.
Right. And speaking of benefiting, again, before we get to MBO, you have a foundation in Jamaica as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that's where, you know, I was born in Jamaica. I lived on a farm till I was 10. And, you know, I saw poverty firsthand. My friends were impoverished. When you're 10, you don't realize it because you're just friends running around, throwing stones and climbing up trees. Not in that order. And, you know, then when you go back, you know, I came here, I was playing tennis, so I couldn't go back that much. And then when I started to go back at 20, you see the delta between you and your friends, and it's quite vast, you know, and, you know, you realize how fortunate you are. And I think more of us should realize that. And I decided, you know, how do I give back? And I did whatever I could at the time. And then 20 years ago, it's our 20th anniversary coming up, I started the Helping Hands Jamaica Foundation, supporting education in Jamaica. And since then, we've built 27 schools across almost every area in Jamaica. And we've done some great projects with, you know, MLSE, Serena Williams, Shaggy, Sean Paul, Lennox Lewis, you know, the Detroit Lions, the San Diego Chargers, you know, and just people like me, you know, that come down, and we build the school in 4 or 5 days and have an opening ceremony. And it's just a great, rewarding experience.
Nice. Hopefully you built some of them near tennis courts.
Yeah, I mean, you know, tennis is not a huge part of that project. You know, there's bigger needs, you know, even that, like I said with the audit earlier, we're digging into those 27 schools to ensure that the education's with excellence. And what we're finding out is it's not. A lot of schools don't have internet. Right. The kids don't have tablets. Right. You know, the kids go to school 2 or 3 days a week because they can't afford a taxi. You know, the kids can't eat lunch. So, you know, we're doing a deeper dive into these schools to see how we can improve them. Get that
straightened out before you get them on the tennis court, honestly. Yeah, exactly. I get that, yeah. So, awesome. Another sort of pathway in your career. Let's talk a little bit about National Bank Open presented by Rogers. Let's first of all go back again. You've been the tournament director for quite a number of years now. How did that all come about?
It's a fascinating story. And, you know, in 2004, 5-ish, Michael Downey was the new CEO. I recall a meeting he had at the Granite Club, you know, at the Senior Nationals. There was 400 people there. And he basically said that, you know, as a tennis nation, we're awful. Everybody's responsible. But we're going to be great. And if you want to be part of the journey, be a part of it. But we're not going to be here anymore because we had one top 100 male, one top 100 female, never won a Grand Slam, never won Fed Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, anything, you know. Everybody started chattering, who is this guy think he is? And, you know, very negative. And then you saw, you know, he put this vision in front of everybody to be great. And then you saw the seeds started to ferment, and, you know, Milos came along and Jeannie came along. You know, it first started with some good junior results in Wimbledon, Philip Pellewo and Jeannie and Vasek. And then Milos came along, and then Dennis Felix, Layla. Then we won, you know, the National Bank Open, the Rogers Cup. Bianca won it, historic. Then she won the US Open. Then we won Davis Cup. Then we won the Fed Cup. So I met him, you know, he met the top 40 people in Canada in tennis, and somehow he considered me one of them. And we had a great meeting for 3 hours. Then Stacey Alistair left. Then Grant Connell came, and he was leaving. And I heard that. So I sent Michael a note saying, you know, hey, I'm your guy. You know, I'd love to do it. He didn't respond for 2 months. And then he said, let's have breakfast. We met for breakfast on a Friday. And he said, I want you to be the tournament director. Think about it, and let's have breakfast Monday. So I said, okay. And then Sunday night, I had the job at Donalda. I loved it, and I wanted to honor my commitments with them. And I didn't want to leave, so I was, thinking I'd love to do both if that's possible. And then in the morning, we're having breakfast, and Michael said to me, I was thinking about it. You do an amazing job here. I don't want you to leave here. He goes, why don't you do both? And I said, that's a great idea.
Well, that worked out well.
So it worked out well. And that was 2005 or 6. Had no idea what I was doing. And again, like I said, greatness is in the agency of others, and worked with great people like Gavin Ziv, who's the new CEO, right. Rob Swan, who's Chief Revenue Officer, who is still here, and a lot of great people along the way that supported me and helped me. Right. And I've watched this tournament turn into a giant, which I believe is going to be the top master series in the world now. And that's based on attendance. We'll do over 500,000 people in attendance, Toronto, Montreal. Great date in the calendar in the summer, so a lot of kids can come. So really exciting.
Yeah. So the tournament's only 6 weeks away, but the preparation and your preparation goes back a long time before that.
Yeah.
I know typically you're over in Europe around this time, probably talking to players and the agents to make sure they're coming. So just give the folks a little flavor on sort of the behind the scenes element of your job. Obviously, everybody sees you doing interviews as the tournament comes close, and the week or the 10 or 13 days of you're around as well. But talk a little bit about the background, the prep that goes on beforehand.
So we've known about this for, approximately 2 years. So we've been preparing literally for 2 years for this extended tournament, volunteers, ball kids, etc. It's a much bigger tournament. We're going from 56 players to 96 players. We have 6 extra sessions. We have championship week, which is all night sessions, August 4th to 7th. All night matches, quarters, semis, finals. It's going to be really exciting. We have the best players in the world coming. Just amazing final we had this last weekend. Sinner, Alcaraz, everybody's texting me.
It was like a 5-hour advertisement for tennis.
Yeah, it was perfect, and so they're going to be here. Doubles this year is going to start on Thursday, basically in the middle of the event. So it allows the players who lose a little bit earlier a chance to continue to play. So if some of the top players lose, they can still play doubles, which is great for our fans. I think it's so exciting because I remember when our tournament used to be back to back, the men and the women, Montreal and Toronto. Yeah. So there was 2 weeks of broadcast for tennis in Canada, which is massive.
Yes.
And then, because of the formats, we were the same week, but now we're going back to the old format. So there's more broadcasts in our country to promote tennis. So I feel as a long-standing member of the tennis community and a massive advocate for it, that what we're seeing now is that tennis is becoming one of the anchor sports of our country, and we're becoming a tennis nation. So what the tournament is the engine that drives that. So it's solidifying us for the future to have great tennis and more wild cards for our players. So they get access to the tournament.
Yeah, I think that's important, actually, what you just talked about. Because, obviously at the OTA, we are heavily involved in the grassroots and the junior development, obviously from the, 10, 9, 8 on up. And certainly we've had some Ontario players that have succeeded and late, but that pipeline has to continue. And obviously the revenues derived from these tournaments are an important part of that. It trickles down to the provinces to kind of get the next generation of young players. We have a few like Vicky Maboko now. The women's game is looking quite good. The young ones coming up. It's a little thin, I think, with the boys, but hopefully in the next few years, that's going to fill out as well. Because there's countries like, when I look at a country like Sweden that had Bjorn Borg turned the entire nation onto it, and then Edberg and Wilander and folks like that followed. I don't think they followed up, and now suddenly, they started maybe spending more money on hockey and soccer, of course, in Sweden, and golf for that matter. But they don't have a lot of players. I think, maybe talk a little bit about the importance of supporting this event and how that will sustain us as a tennis nation over the next generation.
Yeah. So I think, what I look for in our industry is there's a lot of noise, but you try to look for the signals that really make a difference or can make a difference for you or for our sport. So one of the signals is the challenge with Sweden is they didn't have an event like us.
Right.
That can really promote the sport, the wild cards, etc. So it's a huge asset we have. It's just absolutely tremendous. And it elevates us and will elevate us to keep us as a tennis nation. The other signal I look for is, speaking of Vicky and Boko, is in her interview at the French Open, she said that Bianca winning here really inspired her. So now what's happened with this generation of players is they're inspiring the next generation. And for that to happen successfully, you really need your own. We need Canadians to inspire Canadians. Yeah. So Vicky is going to be the next player to inspire the next generation. On the men's side, Diallo's coming up really nicely. He's, roughly 50 in the world right now. Yeah. Sky's the limit for him. And these things happen so fast, Dennis Felix, when Dennis got to the semifinals in Montreal, it literally came out of nowhere, so as
it's hard
long
to believe
as
he's like 9 years in now, it's like yesterday.
It's amazing, and so I think for us is that as long as we have a great tournament and a great development system with the OTA and our Tennis Canada program, it's a feeder system that will grab these great athletes. Right. And as you know, with immigration, a lot of the new immigrants are more apt to be tennis players or tennis fans. So the future is really bright for our sport.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the immigration and the multiculturalism we have here in the country, because tennis, next to soccer, is probably the most global sport. Every country in the world might have one good player.
Yeah.
So we got to tap into that. And I know at the OTA, we're doing a little bit to try to move, as is Tennis Canada, to find where these immigrants are playing or living and try to get them onto the court, so.
You can really see it at our tournament when the different players play, So for example, when we had Halep play, you saw the Romanian community. Yeah. When Haddad Maia played, you had this huge Brazilian community, which we never even knew existed. So we really used the multiculturalism from Toronto and Canada to our advantage. And the players love coming here because they know it's going to be like home. They'll have their own ethnic foods, their own people, their own newspapers. I'm sounding old now because it's online, but we're in really, the new extended tournament really puts us in solid footing for a great future.
Yeah, I heard another country. I heard a story about Djokovic. I guess he had a day off from playing or whatever afternoon, and you guys probably arranged for him to play golf somewhere, and he shows up at some golf club and there's a Serbian wedding going on, and apparently he crashed and he goes, only in Canada could I find a Serbian wedding.
Yeah, I remember that. And there's a lot of stories like that with our different players. And these days, tennis players come from every country. Federer came from Switzerland, would never had a player prior. So you never know.
No, you never know.
Yeah.
So it's coming up. So what's your next sort of 6 weeks look like? Are you going to be, you're ramping up big time right now.
Yeah, we're really focused on getting as much and many youth to the tournament as possible, because one of the missions of Tennis Canada is to grow the sport, like the OTA. So we really want to get ticket sales moving. The good news is, the finals on a Thursday night is great. The suites are sold out. We have our community day on July 27th, this is the first round. So it's almost sold out, and that'll be Canada night. So to take you through the tournament, some interesting highlights is, we start July 26th. It's qualifying, 1 day qualifying. We're the only tournament in the world, 32 draw. Then the main draw starts on Sunday. So the top 32 players have byes, so they don't play Sunday or Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday is the first rounds where all the top players are going to be playing. Go through the week. There's some giveaway programs. National Bank Day, you get a water bottle. Psycho Bunny Day, you get a hat. Then the first weekend is our Tennis Fest weekend. So really geared towards our younger audience with DJs and happy hours, etc. So you might see me there. I can enjoy a happy hour. And then we finish off with the championship week, which is going to be spectacular, the best of the best competing for our title. So that's quarters on Monday and Tuesday, the 4th and the 5th. And then on the 6th, it's the semifinals, culminates with a spectacular final on the 7th. The winner gets $1.1 million. And I don't know about you, but I've never made that in 12 days or 12 years. So, just really exciting 12 days of tennis in Toronto.
That's great. Now, it's tough economic times these days, and I know Tennis Canada has looked at that, and I know there's some value sections at the tournament. Talk a little bit about that, because I think we need to get, especially for young families and stuff, I think this is really important. Yeah,
just a really integral part of our values and our organization comes up in all of our meetings is affordability. We want as many people to have access to our tournament as possible. So you can get a ticket as cheap as $20. On the 300 level, you can buy beer and hot dogs for $5. There's no other major event in the world that offers that value. So, for under $100, a family of four can come watch world-class tennis. 300 level, you can go to the practice courts, watch the top players practice really up close and personal for $100 value. It's just the best in category in sports, and we're have a responsibility to our fans and to our community to have people come. So we hope everybody will tell everybody about how affordable we are and come and watch some of this great tennis.
Good. And for all you folks that have just heard that, while you're here, especially if you're non-players and want to give it a try, it's very inspiring. And we also have our Ontario Tennis Association booth. You can learn about where to play locally. Tell us where you live. We'll send you to a local club or academy and that sort of thing, because this is what it's all about. We're all here together to try to promote the sport and grow it, frankly. Yeah. So, I think we work in tandem closely with Tennis Canada, as do the other provinces. Obviously, Montreal has the same event. I think we're so unique in that respect. At first, I remember when they split the women and the men and ran at the same time, I go, how is this going to happen? What a dumb idea. Why not? But it's 2 live gates, continuous television. It's actually the most amazing thing.
It's the best of the best, and, back to your question, in the next 6 weeks, I'm going to head over to Wimbledon for a week for some meetings and meet some agents and players. And, since I've been in this business since 2006, develop deep relationships with, the agents and the players. So just making sure that, if there's any issues or anything that I know about it. But at this time, it's really, really good. And especially with Alcaraz and Sinner rejuvenating a rivalry that we had in the past with the big three. So they've taken over the throne. And I think Dennis and Felix really need to put a foot in the ground at our tournament, because they haven't performed their best at our tournament in the last 5 years. And they really want to, but I think the experience, has taught them it's just another tournament. Just come and play, block out the noise of the family and the friends and the agents and the sponsors. And I think this year they're really ready to put on a great show. And then you're going to have all the other amazing players. Fonseca is just up and coming #1 for sure. You have the Monfils and TFOs who are just dynamic, exciting to watch. And then you got the other ones that are, the Medvedev, the Ruud, the Rublevs, who don't want to give up their top 10 status and keep in there. So great storylines for our tournament, and Canadians and others.
Yeah, and the worst player in the tournament is still a phenomenal tennis player. Like even if you're on a side court watching, with 10 other people, the tennis is spectacular. There's no question. I mean, if you're 150 in the world, you're a pretty good tennis player. There's a lot of people worse than you. That's for sure.
It's like going to a 5-star Michelin restaurant. You know, nothing's bad.
Exactly.
It's all good. So I think that, for me, when I watch a practice court and I watch these players, and you watch the matches on the outside courts and you see the grit, the determination, the competitiveness, the no quit, and you understand that player 100 in the world is the last guy in the draw is an incredible player, and the prize money, the points, it means so much for them. And you just appreciate that when you watch it up close, and the intensity of it is just incredible. Yeah,
I think the side court experience is a little underestimated by people. I encourage people to walk the entire grounds, and there's obviously some really good venue sites for even the practice courts, which is also a unique experience for the the lay fan. They're not seeing that every day. It's really immersive, and with all the off-court stuff that you guys are adding this year, I think it's going to be an amazing event. So Karl, you're probably on a plane shortly, so we're going to wrap it up quickly, but I got to ask you one sort of thing, and you don't have to name names, but can you give us a couple of, say, some of the sort of strangest or funniest special requests that a player has put in over the years, or maybe a touching moment that you've seen a world-class player interact with a fan or something like, just something kind of to humanize that whole experience?
Yeah, I got a couple of, you see so many things. The good thing to report is, as a sport, our athletes are phenomenal. Yeah. They really understand their position in our sport, and to be accessible, and to be kind, and to be approachable. So our sport is in really good hands with the athletes today and before. So that's the good news. Some are great stories. I remember Rafa, a few years ago, I believe it was 2018 when he won. It was after the match, and after the match, it gets really hectic. People are leaving, and you got to wrap up things. And I was walking at the 300 level, and I saw two brothers. One was in a wheelchair, one was pushing him around, and they came up to me and they said, "Hey, can Rafa sign this?" And I said, I apologize, but it's not the time right now. It's really difficult. And I walked like 100 feet, and then my conscience got me. And I turned back and I said, "What do you want him to sign?" They said, "Oh, this picture." So I said, "Just hold on a second." So I went down to the locker room and I said, "Rafa," I said, there's a gentleman up there in a wheelchair, and he wants you to sign a photo, and he said, "Bring him down." So I said, "Okay." So I went back and I said, "Hey guys, come in with me." Took him in the elevator, took him to the locker room. Rafa gave him his shirt, gave him his racket, signed his picture, took pictures with them. And it just shows what an athlete and gentleman Rafa is. And there's just so many stories like that, with our athletes.
Yeah. It's an interesting environment because they're not too far away from the crowds. I mean, obviously there's security issues, but here they are just driving through the crowd sometimes to get to a side court or something like that. It's pretty immersive for sure. So listen, Karl, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about your past and also this upcoming tournament. We wish you all the best. And let's create some more champions.
Yeah, thank you so much. And remember, everybody, get your affordable tickets, nationalbankopen.com, and we'll see everybody this summer.